Hey everyone, and welcome back to OntarioCryptids. Today we're going to take a look at some old newspaper articles I found on the internet. This brings up a topic I think I may have loosely touched on before, which is censorship of information to the public. It seems like in the late 1800s and early 1900s, the newspaper companies seemed to be very liberal about what was written in their local newspapers. At some point, things changed and less of these hairy man stories were being told. But that's a whole other conversation for another time. I have randomly picked 3 newspaper articles to share with you today. Now, I'm always looking for great stories to be shared on this channel. So if you have a story that you would like to share in a safe environment, then forward your encounter stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. Okay, so go grab yourself a beverage and get cozy on the couch or chair and sit back and relax. Okay, so this story was written on March the 3rd, 1934, and it was written in the Lethbridge Herald, Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. And the title of this is The Dreaded Wild Man. This encounter takes place in Harrison Mills, British Columbia, Canada. And if you take a look around, the neighborhood may have changed quite a bit from 1934. The newspaper article starts off by saying, "Dreaded wild men strike fear into Indian children." Chehalis tribe claims to have seen hairy men who live in caves in subterranean caverns. And then it goes on to say, on March the 3rd, 1934, Harrison Mills, British Columbia, Canada, Indian children stay close to their mother's apron strings, for the fearsome Sasquatch had returned to spread terror through peace-loving Chehalis tribes. Stories of these hairy creatures, men and women, are among the weirdest of the tribal legends, but none have been seen for 30 years until it was whispered recently through the Indian lodges that the dreaded wild men of the Chehalis Hills were again on the prowl. Then Frank Dan saw a Sasquatch. Investigating the persistent barking of his dog at night, Dan came face to face with a hairy giant who, according to Dan, was tall and muscular, prowling in the nude. He was covered with black hair from head to foot, except for a small space around the eyes. Dan ran breathlessly into his house and secured the door. Peeking through the window, he saw the giant stride leisurely into the nearby bush and disappear. The Indians say the Sasquatch dwell in caves and subterranean caverns on the border of the lakes in the mountain flatness. Many strange tales are told of the disappearance of the elusive people. A Chehalis woman related that when her husband was returning from the hunt with a score or more of ducks he had shot, a Sasquatch stepped out of the bush and took the ducks from him, except one, which the giant stuffed into the shirt of the frightened Indian. Okay, so this next story is written on October the 25th, 1935, and it is published in the Hammond Times, again, Vancouver. And believe it or not, it's not too far from the last story. This one takes place near Morris Valley. And I found the closest thing to Morris Valley, which is Morris Valley Road. I'm guessing it's somewhere in this region here. The article starts off by saying, Sasquatch men, remnants of a lost race of wild men who inhabited the rocky regions of British Columbia centuries ago, are reported roaming the province again. After an absence of several months from the district of Harrison Mills, 50 miles east of Vancouver, the long, weird, wolf-like howls of the wild man are being heard again, and 2 of the hairy monsters were reported seen in the Morris Valley on the Harrison River. Residents in the district tell us of seeing 2 giants leaping and bounding out of the trees and striding across the duck-feeding grounds, wallowing now and again in the bog and mire and long, waving swamp grasses. Reported agile as goats. The strange men, it was reported, after emerging from the woods, came leaping down the jagged rocky hillside with the agility and lightness of a mountain goat's. Snatches of their weird language floating on the breeze across the lake to the pioneer settlement at the foot of the hills. The giants walked with an easy gait across the swamp flats and at the Mourns Creek. In the shadow of Little Mystery Mountain, straddled a floating log, which they propelled with their long, hairy hands and huge feet across the sluggish glacial stream to the opposite side. There they abandoned the log and climbed hand over hand up the almost perpendicular cliff at a point known as Gibraltar and disappeared at the top of the ridge. They carried 2 large clubs and walked around a herd of cattle directly in their path. Indians' story retold. The return of the giants to the legendary stronghold of the Sasquatch monsters recalls the narrow escape of an Indian at the same point last March. A huge rock nearly missed his canoe while he was fishing, and looking up, he said he saw a huge and hairy monster stamping his feet and gesturing wildly. The Indian escaped by cutting his fishing tackle and paddling away. The same Indian declares the Sasquatch have twice stolen salmon which he had tied outside his house out of reach of the dogs. The latest appearance of the monsters was peaceful. They avoided the trails usually used by people of the valley and molested neither the cattle nor human beings. People who have reported seeing the giants on their rare appearances describe them as ferocious-looking wild men, 9 feet tall and covered from head to toe with thick black hair. All right, so here is their last article of the day. It was written on June the 29th, 1898 in Naugatuck, Connecticut. I hope I said that right. And the title of this one is called The Cotton Hollow Wild Man. The region that this takes place in is Naugatuck, New Haven County, Connecticut. And again, this was 1898, so I'm sure the area has changed immensely. You can see a lot of homes on the map, which I'm sure were not there back in 1898. 4 Danbury men discovered a gigantic wild man last week in Cotton Hollow, a section of the county between High Rock Grove and Naugatuck. They were Jerry Wilson, Howard Bradley, James Durbin, and George Howes, and they were working in that vicinity. On the night of their discovery, they had been spending the night with friends near High Rock Grove and were returning to their stomping place through the woods between 11 and 12 o'clock at night. As they were trudging along, a man of gigantic stature sprang out in front of them from among the bushes and shouted out to Wilson, who was ahead. "How far is the next town?" 3 miles, said Wilson, with his hair standing on end and his eyes almost bulging from their sockets. Without saying anything more, the giant started off on a wild run and disappeared in the woods and the darkness. All 4 of the men had seen him. However, before he was out of sight, and they were satisfied that he was at least twice as tall as everyone of their party and correspondingly as large every other way. They acknowledged to having been pretty thoroughly scared by this sudden appearance. The next morning, they commenced systematic investigations. They went back to the place of their discovery and measured the foot tracks of the giant. They were 18 inches long and 5.5 inches broad. The heel alone measured 5 inches. Then they made inquiries of the people who lived in Cotton Hollow and were informed that such a man had been seen several times. He was known to be at least 9 feet tall and to weigh no less than 500 pounds. Unless the vision of these men was greatly magnified on that night, and unless the people of the neighborhood told them stories to suit the occasion, they saw a character that Branham and Bailey ought to have to exhibit to Englishmen as a specimen of American products. They were willing to swear to the truth of their statements and are sure that they saw a man who would be a giant among giants. There you have it, guys. 3 articles from newspapers dating back as early as 1898. And these, as I said, were just basically just told as it happened. There doesn't seem to be anything withheld in these articles. And at some point, things changed. I would say probably about 1945-ish, they started mumming up and not saying anything about what was being seen. In any case, that is going to wrap it up for today. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. And if these stories reminded you of an encounter that you may have had, then please go ahead and forward your encounter stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com, and I would be happy to share your encounter on this channel. Okay, thank you for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit that like button on your way out and smash that subscribe button if you're new to my channel. And guys, make sure you have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you all next week.